I wanted to talk about Death Stranding because I recently did a second playthrough in preparation for the release of Death Stranding 2, and I found this playthrough to be incredibly introspective in ways that I didn't necessarily expect them to be, mostly because my experience was different than it was the first time around. And one of the things that I kind of mentioned in the last video was how the first time that we experience something that's very sacred, it's very special to us. But it was very interesting coming back and re-experiencing something that I had already gone through and how that made me feel differently than I did last time. And I thought that was so profound, and so I wanted to take the time to talk about it, but I don't really know where to begin because everything is kind of... I remember when we saw this character in the initial reveal trailers, and just the sort of like mystery and mystique behind this sort of like military character that almost seems like out of place and out of time in the setting that we've come to expect for Death Stranding. And so it was really kind of cool to sort of like unravel those threads along the way and figure out what they're trying to say with that story as it's convoluted. I mean, the story itself is really kind of difficult for me to articulate as someone who's spent about 150 hours with the game over the course of 2 playthroughs. And it would be very difficult for me to just try to sit down and explain it to someone who hasn't experienced that before, because it's such a unique thing to go through for yourself. I was thinking about how you could sort of portray the experience of playing Death Stranding to somebody who hasn't necessarily played Death Stranding before. And I thought it would be pretty difficult to try to, like, emulate what it is like to have the controller in your hands, because it's so natural feeling once you really kind of get the hang of it that it kind of becomes like a second nature. But I was trying to kind of like think of ways that, using the art form of a video to kind of show what it's like to experience going through this world. And so in the snowy sections, I've kind of got this bordered frame and this a little bit of a filter that makes it look like there's even more of a whiteout happening in the snowstorm, which is really kind of cool because there's not something that I could really equate it to per se. It's more so something that you have to actually have, the haptic and analog feeling of experiencing this game for yourself. When I'm climbing a mountain, it's not, there's nothing else like it. It's hard to explain unless you've experienced it. So I think that I thought it would be kind of fun and interesting to toy with the idea of running backwards, and because it's so kind of alien. To see somebody moving in reverse, and I feel like so much of this experience is about like how it's kind of everything. It's going to be very interesting, given that Death Stranding 2 is right around the corner. We're going to have so many people who are going to be interested in this game and want to play it, and they might be jumping in without the experience of Death Stranding 1. I think that they'll be missing out in a big way, mostly because of what this game is capable of making you feel. And I think that that's what's so unique about it, is going back and playing it for a second time, I'm really seeing how this game, there's levels to it, there's layers to everything. just have come to appreciate it on a deeper level. And it not only has made me more excited for the sequel that's coming up, but it's also given me more just of a broader appreciation for video games as an art form in general. I think that one of the things that really stuck out to me this time through was the moments where I just wanted to stop and pause and really kind of soak in the surroundings, really kind of breathe in everything around. There are definitely some moments that I feel like you don't necessarily connect with unless you know, do it yourself, because there's so much in the learning process of it. It's like learning how to play with Legos in a lot of ways. You're building with these that I was experiencing, and that is just, it was so cool to go through something that was familiar but was also so new and fresh at the same time. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what sort of ways they can kind of push this style of game. You know, I know that when it first came out, there was a lot of talk about this being a walking simulator. I don't necessarily think that I would call it a walking simulator. Maybe a climbing simulator or a building simulator, a life, you know, the style. Simulator or something like that, but just to say, to boil it down to just walking would be, you know, such a disservice to what the game is really trying to achieve, in my opinion. And I think that that's, and so part of what I was trying to toy with throughout this, you know, editing process is using these different filters and what are called layouts, basically these borders. So you can see on the screen right now I have these borders on the edges, and I could have those there without any sort of, you know, drawing any sort of specific attention to it, and it could just be there to sort of frame the shot in specific ways. And I think that that can kind of lend itself to the experience of what it feels like to play through this game. And I feel like they do such a really great job of kind of immersing you in what it would be like to be Sam, if that makes sense. And so in these moments where I'm kind of pausing and breathing in the surroundings, taking in everything around me, I'm taking away those filters, I'm taking away those borders so that we could see the game in its full clarity. Because in a lot of senses, I feel like personally, as the player, that if somebody hasn't experienced this for themselves, that would kind of be what it would be like to watch somebody play this game. It's like there are these sort of borders and filters that are kind of, you know, they're in ways they're kind of, I really appreciate this scene because it's the little things when it comes to the characters and it comes to the acting and the writing. He hands it to her instead of like feeding it to her. She can do that herself. She's not a damsel in distress. She's a friend who needs his help. And after thanking him, of course, she says, altering the way that you're experience the game, because you're just an observer, and so you don't have that sort of same connection and feeling to everything that's happening around you. You know, I was trying to kind of, you know, gather my thoughts, and then I was just kind of brought back to this moment where I just felt like everything kept getting louder and louder around me. The music just kept crescendoing, and it was swelling to such a sound that it was just almost drowning out my thoughts. It took over everything that I was, experiencing, and that in itself, I had already stopped, throughout this particular leg of this journey, because I know how the game works. I know that if I get too close to my objective, that the music's gonna. Because when they say that tomorrow is in your hands, I don't necessarily know if I'm supposed to take that just like figuratively or literally, because could tomorrow be actually like in our hands? It's almost like there are references to it, like it's right under our nose. I don't understand. And because that it's kind of fleeting out here when you're making deliveries. And I wish they would just give us an iPod. Like, you're capable of climbing a mountain. I've never done so in real life, but I feel like I'm coming up against mountains all the time, and it makes it so simple and so easy when I'm